Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be covering an exciting new technical breakthrough that allows for running WordPress without a server. It opens up loads of new exciting possibilities, including things like learning WordPress fully within the browser with no installation steps required. If that sounds interesting, and it should, then you'll want to watch this video until the end to ensure you don't miss out. My name's Dave Smith, Gutenberg core team member and full-time WordPress contributor, and today I'm delighted to be joined by the contributor who is behind all this effort, Adam Zielinski.
Hi Dave, thanks for having me today.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for making the time to discuss WordPress with no server today. Let's jump straight into the topic of today's video. So Adam, my first question is, what is serverless WordPress and why should we care about it?
Well, what serverless means actually is running WordPress directly in a web browser without a PHP server. So that's a quite large change from how WordPress traditionally works. So normally you have a web server, which is a separate computer, and your web browser communicates with that web server. So it says things like, well, I'd like to see a homepage of that blog. And then the server replies with that. However, in this new approach, WordPress works directly in your browser, so there is no network communication. Everything is happening on your local computer. So this essentially means you could work with WordPress even in offline mode, for example. And it isn't fully stable just yet. However, I still believe it's a major breakthrough that could transform learning, contributing, and using WordPress in the future.
Wow, yeah, that does sound amazing. So it's completely shifting from this traditional model of WordPress to an in-browser version of WordPress. Yeah, I can really see how that could open up a lot of possibilities, especially around learning, as you said. But it's kind of quite difficult to get your head around this when we talk about it. So should we have a look at a quick demo?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's jump straight into it. So what we're seeing on a screen right now is a WordPress running right in your browser without any server or anything. In fact, it's a browser in a browser sort of a situation. So there's a Chrome browser, and then inside of it, there's like this little fake browser thing where we can go to specific places. So let me log in. Go to wp-login.php. Yeah. Well, here's the WordPress login screen, and I'll log in as admin with my very secure password. That's just password. And boom, here we go. Like, it's a fully functional WordPress right here, right in my browser. I can write posts, I can edit my theme, I can even upload files as of recently, and hopefully in a couple of days, it will be possible to use the plugin and themes directory. So as you can imagine, it would be nice to go to wordpress.org, browse some plugins, and try them right then and there. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time for things to load. That's one of the kinks, but we'll work it out. Here's a site editor.
This demo is live. This demo is live and available on the public web now, so people can try this out. Can they?
Yeah. You can go to this URL right here, which is wasm.wordpress.net/wordpress-browser.html, and it's right there, available for everyone.
Well, we'll put a link in the comments. Check out the comments below for a link to that, and people can have a play with it. It looks really amazing. So yeah, it must be strange for people to get their head around, because it does still look like it just looks like WordPress, because of course it is WordPress. But the fact is, this isn't like some iframe magic or anything like that. It is all running in the browser. You haven't got a local web server set up running this. You aren't having a WordPress instance hosted running this. It's just running in the browser. So every person who goes to wasm.wordpress.net will have their own instance of WordPress running in their own browser. So there's no like overlap. It's not like if I log in now to this, I'll be working with you, will it? It'd be my own personal instance. Is that right?
Yes, that's exactly right. And the collaboration thing that you mentioned is actually interesting angle on this, and I hope one day it will work like that. But for now, it's just your completely private, very own WordPress instance. And for the technical part of the audience, this is possible thanks to something called, aside of the entire WebAssembly business, there is something called a service worker here. And it's just a JavaScript program that is capable of intercepting all the web requests your browser makes. So they never go to the server, but they go to this little script here called serviceworker.js, and we'll be able to see that in the network tab. If I, for example, let's write a new post, and there's a request. Let's go right back there. There's a request over here, and it seems to go somewhere on the internet. However, if we inspect that, you can see there's a status code 200 here from service worker, so it never actually went to any server out there. And if we take a look at that service worker, that's a build file, so not as pretty, but there's a complete request handler over here. So whenever the browser tries to fetch anything, it just goes right here and detects a PHP request, and then like has all this stuff right here to use an actual in-browser WordPress to resolve it.
Okay. So I see that. So that service worker, it's capturing, intercepting requests that would normally go out to the web server, and it's capturing them and saying, don't go out to the web server, go to this in-browser version of WordPress. So how does that in-browser version of WordPress work? What's the technology behind it? I mean, that's obviously something that's fairly new. So how does that work at a sort of high level?
Sure. So there's something called, and I'm going to do a live search here, PHP in the browser. And this is a project originally started by someone else. I went ahead and forked it for the needs of WordPress WASM. And what this is, well, someone took PHP source code and found a way to compile it to WebAssembly. And WebAssembly is just a way of compiling traditional programs that normally run on your desktop into a format supported by the browser. So this means you run an actual, real PHP language right in your browser. And because WordPress is a PHP software, well, this PHP in the browser WebAssembly thing, it enables this entire idea of running a WordPress in the browser. So without this building block right here, none of what you just seen would be even possible. So this PHP in the browser thing, it even has a live playground available. Let's URL, check out the video description later on to go here directly. And in here you can see it's possible to run any PHP code. Well, not exactly any, but most of it. And you have like some live demos to choose from. So there's a simple PHP info, and you can see it returns the real thing. But the really interesting one, the one that caught my attention and inspired this entire WordPress in the browser thing, is Drupal. So yeah, they actually found a way to run Drupal using this thing. Right here, right in this playground, you can click two buttons and start playing with it. There are some rough edges, and this is really inspiring, and I wonder like if in the future we're going to see things like, browsers running inside of browsers. I don't know why, but like whatever is possible will be eventually done.
Yeah, thanks for that demo, Adam. It's certainly really, really impressive technically, but what I'm curious to hear is what are the practical use cases that you see for this technology?
Man, I'm glad you asked. Like, it's such a game changer in primarily three areas. So first is learning and teaching WordPress, which means I really want people to be able to just click a button and start learning how to build their first blog, first WordPress plugin, a theme. Right now, there are materials available out there, but you have to go through all the setup steps. You have to install web server, JavaScript packages, like even the entire Node.js machinery. If you don't have it locally, you have to clone some Git repositories. There's a huge barrier of entry there. And I want people to be able to just click a link, learn how to create a blog, and there you are in a code editor where your blog, like there's just a scaffold there and instructions for you. Will type in this and that. And as soon as you do that, you have a live preview right there in your browser in the same window on the right side of the screen. say. And this is a huge enabler also for course creators, because now you don't have to worry about teaching people how to set up their coding environment. You can just focus on creating content and sharing your knowledge. So that's my huge hope. Let's jump into a live demo and see how this could work in practice. So here's a part of the WordPress data layer tutorial that I recently published that's adapted to that uses WordPress WASM for live code examples. So this is a paragraph of text that explains you how the get entity record selector works. And instead of just talking about it and trying to paint a picture, it actually allows you to play with it. So here's a code example, and let's run it. Well, it says null, and the tutorial explains it right away. Get entity records returns null first, and then it immediately starts resolving a resource, and once the resource is loaded, it will return it on the second run. So let's rerun the snippet and see if that's true. There we go. So now we can expand it and see what we actually loaded. Well, here's a page. It has a title, it has a content, and it's an actual real object coming from a WordPress API, only one running in your browser. And that's just one line of code. But can we run entire React component and render it? Well, the answer is yes. And here's a snippet that you can play with. Let's run it. Well, yeah, there we go. And we can customize it, the header, and run. And yeah, it just shows up right here.
Completely live. And I think the thing to get here is this isn't just a React component, because that, that's fine, it's just JavaScript. This is actually a React component that's interacting with WordPress via the data layer. So we've got the select there, we're saying get entity records, we want to get all the pages, basically, is what we're saying, and then output them. So unless we had an instance of WordPress to work with, we wouldn't see any pages, there wouldn't be any. So that's the real key here. So we're in, although it is just a JavaScript code example, behind the scenes it's interacting with the in-browser WordPress instance.
Yeah, exactly. And so I heard some people saying, what's the big deal here? I could just run a WordPress instance on the server and do the exact same thing. Well, the key here is that you can also edit data in here. So I could potentially create a form and be able to edit that page. And let's say one very malicious user would go here and just type in obscenities. Well, you don't want to show that to everyone else, right? Not to mention there's some test data that might be essential for running the example. Like right here, we do have an entity record to display. It shows up right here, right? It's a page. If it wasn't there, you would just see an empty list. That would be a very confusing experience. So with this kind of private in-browser WordPress instance, you can be 100% certain you'll always have the right starting stage, and there are zero marginal costs of running that. Like if there are 10,000 users taking the course, that doesn't cost you any extra money to run 10,000 WordPress servers, right? It's just, well, download a file and your browser is your development environment.
Wow, and I like the way this works because it could be in some ways progressively enhanced if you see what I mean. So if some people say, oh, well, my browser isn't fast enough to run this, or I can only use an old browser, then they can still use WordPress and they can still learn the course in the old way and set up their own development environment. But if for those of us who are privileged enough to use these newer browsers, they can just do it. So it's like there's no backwards compatibility problems there for people who haven't got the technology either. They can just use it if they can. So yeah, I really, really see how this could really revolutionize, I think, learning WordPress. It really, really could. It's very, very powerful. Thanks for that demo.
Yeah, I think so. I think so too. And I have another very quick example just to show. This thing we just saw, it's just the tip of the iceberg. Like here's the real kicker. Here on the screen, we see WordPress running in a service called StackBlitz. And StackBlitz is essentially a IDE, full coding thing like Visual Studio running right in your browser. This particular example was prepared by, I started it off, and then Grzegorz Ziółkowski customized it to bring a create blog tutorial into it. So we do have like example blog right in here. And as you can see, like we can just edit all the files right here, right in the browser. And here's that blog's code. And if we go to, well, let's create a new post and see what happens. We're in a block editor right now, and let's see how our block works. So it's called example block, example static, and there we go. It's right here. Example static hello from the editor, same thing as here, and it all works together. I can edit this code example, and my change will be reflected in the editor on the right-hand side. And that's just a fantastic beginning of very useful learning framework for all future WordPress features. Like imagine building a block with this thing and building a plugin, and you know what? This doesn't even have to stop at learning. Why wouldn't you build an actual plugin using this setup? Why wouldn't you develop your next PR right in your browser, right?
Yes. You could have all the like a standardized setup with the standardized tooling and testing and linting and everything just ready to go. So start new plugin and it would just set that up, and you'd be ready and underway in 5 seconds, rather than having to go, oh, how do I set all that up again? Clone another repo. Yeah, this is really game changing stuff, Adam. Fantastic.
Thank you so much. I think so too, and I'm very excited about the future of this project.
All right, Adam. So what's next for this technology? We've seen a brilliant demo, we've seen how it works, but what's coming up? I mean, how do we take this to the next level? I assume it's not really production ready yet.
Yeah, like not quite. It works surprisingly well in major browsers, but I wouldn't use it for mission critical applications just at this point. And the reason is that it suffers from an occasional crash on a Chromium-based browsers like Google Chrome, and that's just the charm of being on the frontier of what's possible and using all the bleeding edge technology amalgamated in a single project. It's a single bundle of very unstable stuff.
Exactly. If you're using a new project like that, when it's something that's never been done before, it's inevitable there's going to be some of that that sort of suffering from the occasional crash when you're working at the bleeding edge.
It doesn't help also that we rely on plenty of moving parts. So this particular crash I mentioned is actually a browser bug in Google Chrome. I found by accident. At the beginning, all these examples that you just saw, the tutorial, the code editor, they crashed like every other page refresh. And it was like, it drove me crazy. I couldn't figure it out. Like I spent a bunch of hours, even built Chrome, from the source code, like debugged it, tried everything. And after a fruitful conversation with the Chromium team on the backtracker, I finally learned that's a browser problem. Like Chrome runs like weird code path, goes into out of memory error, all that. Like the point is, it can't be fixed in the WordPress WASM project. Like we just have to wait until the Chrome patches it up. However, I found a different technique of running the WASM file, and it makes the crash much less likely. Like I haven't seen it in days now, which is very optimistic. And like for sure it will happen for some users using that, hopefully on the rare occasions. But if you want to present something on, say, like your company homepage, and it's super important that it never crashes for anyone, like I just wouldn't do that right at this point in time. However, if the use case you have for that, like it's fine if like every one in whatever number of people will experience the browser tab crashing. Yeah, like a course, right? Like people will probably tolerate that, just like refresh the page, move on. That's fine as long as they don't lose their progress. So for these type of use cases, like for early adopters, it's probably just fine.
Well, hopefully Chrome will patch that bug sooner rather than later anyway, and then it won't be a problem anymore. So that's just how these things work. But not everything's under your control. But speaking of things that are under your control, what would be the next steps for the WordPress WASM project?
Oh man, like there's so many things. So for sure, I want to ramp up the developer documentation, because this being a very new project, it needs contributors. And the only way you can start contributing is if you know how it works. So it's all in my head right now, and I want to get it down on paper and share it with everyone to make it very easy to both use and help. Like another thing is setting up a live previews of WordPress plugins and themes in WordPress.org plugin directory. This way you could just go there and try out all these fantastic extensions without having to install them on your live website. And the final thing that's very high on the priority list is actually taking these runnable and editable code examples that we saw in the previous demo and bringing them into courses on learn.wordpress.org. I shipped one of these courses recently, and I'm very excited about making it interactive, and I want to make it very easy for other course authors to do the same.
Yeah, that sounds really powerful. So the course you're referring to is Learning the WordPress Data Learn. We'll have a link to that in the notes down below. But your one will be the sort of the guinea pig for this, will it? So you'll have an in-browser learning environment at some point, hopefully on that course directly.
Yes, that's the idea. And I want to make it easy to the point where adding code snippets is just a Gutenberg block. You build your course, you add a snippet, bam, that's the entire setup you have to do.
That'd be amazing. Well, I can't wait to see that. You have to let me know when that comes out. We'll have to do another video or post an update at least to this one. So yeah, if anyone's curious about that, keep looking out for the comments on this video when I'll post that when Adam has it running. Wow. Well, it certainly seems like you've got a lot of work on your hands and probably more than one person can do. So I suppose you're going to need some help.
Absolutely. For this project to be successful, it's a huge undertaking, and it aims very high with changing how education works in WordPress, with how demoing things works, even with how using WordPress works, because that would be great environment to try out things on a copy of your site, right? Even to this extent. And so it needs more help. As you mentioned, all these things, it's way more than a single person can do. So if all of that sounds exciting, please take a look at the issue tracker. There's a link in the description. Come by and say hi on Slack. Let's get in touch. Let's chat. I'd love to give you, the viewer, a personal tour of the project. And I could really use your perspective with helping more people get on board, right? Like the kind of questions that are asked at the beginning when getting familiar with a new project. I don't have that perspective anymore. Like it's a beginner's mind, and it will be very, very refreshing to just see that. So please get in touch, and let's try to make this the revolution it could be.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anyone watching this video has got questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and I'll make sure they get passed on to Adam, and we'll get some responses to any of those questions that you have. So Adam, aside from all this work on serverless WordPress and WordPress WASM, I assume you've also been busy working on WordPress, and I know you're obviously heavily involved in the Gutenberg block editor project. So is there any work you've been doing recently you're particularly excited about you'd like to share with viewers today?
Yeah, absolutely. A bunch of it. So one thing I'm particularly excited about is this new system for editing and updating HTML attributes in the markup. So all the way up until now, whenever you had a HTML snippet to adjust, add a class name, remove an attribute, it required a lot of manual work, regular expressions, all that. But these days, we're bringing a core native API to take care of all of that. It's called WP HTML Tag Processor, and it's already a part of the Gutenberg plugin. Hopefully, it will make it to WordPress 6.2, and it's already it's already used to adjust all these kind of use cases in the Gutenberg code base, and like it makes such a nice difference. Another thing I was working on is a course called Using the WordPress Data Layer in JavaScript. There's a link in the description, and it just teaches you how to, if you're writing a JavaScript app, how to take advantage of all the fantastic APIs that WordPress ships with that weren't very popular so far. Many people didn't know about them. So it teaches you everything you need to know to get started. And finally, I've been working on simplifying access to these data APIs. So the course I just mentioned teaches you the fundamentals and how things work on a low level. But in the meantime, I also noticed that can be tedious. So I prepared a series of shorthand APIs that help you get away without having all this low-level knowledge. You just call a function, and if you don't need anything fancy or overly custom, that's it. It's a one line of code versus maybe 20 lines of code and a deep understanding. So I'm also very excited about that. All the links to these things I just mentioned, you'll find them in the description. Also, I really enjoyed watching your video, Dave, on the top 5 features shipping in WordPress 6.1 with Anne McCarthy. I've sort of fell behind with keeping up. I was busy with all this work, and it really helped me get up to speed with all the key features and updates in this new WordPress release.
Oh, well, thanks, man. I'm glad to know you enjoyed that. Yeah, it was it was good to have Anne on the channel, because obviously Anne is very much on top of the latest WordPress release information. So she's the perfect person to come on a channel and do a video about WordPress 6.1. So if you want to see that video, I definitely recommend checking out the link that will be above or below in the show notes.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. And what about you, Dave? What have you been up to recently?
For 6.1, I've been on navigation project, which also includes the block. There's quite a few changes for 6.1. There's a new fallback system. There's a new UI. We've been really focused on making the block just work better, just out of the box. So if you want to see how that's changed things, I have actually done a video on that as well. So I'll link that above. And I'm kind of excited now because we're moving into the 6.2 cycle now that WordPress 6.1 is in RC as of the time of recording this video. But 6.2, we're really going to be focusing on the navigation project on editing, managing, and creating actual navigation menus. So I think that people will really notice the change, hopefully, by the time we get to the release of 6.2. This was really good, Adam. Thank you so much for joining us today to talk all about serverless WordPress. A reminder, if you really enjoyed this video, please be sure to hit that like button, and you'll get a full rundown of what's coming to WordPress 6.1 if you subscribe to the channel, because I've got an upcoming video which will cover all the features in quick time, hopefully in under 5 minutes, although with all the number of features that are in 6.1, that might be optimistic. So, Adam, can you remind folks, if they want to find you, follow you, get in touch with you, where's the best place and how's the best place to do that?
Yeah, I share a lot of updates on my Twitter. Link here, and you'll also find a clickable one in the description. You can follow me exactly on my GitHub. Fantastic.
Well, folks, should definitely check out those links and keep up to date with what Adam's up to, because he's churning out some really, really great work at the moment. So it was really great that you took the time out to join us on the show today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Dave. It's been a pleasure.
Well, excellent. That's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure you hit that like button. Thank you once again to Adam for joining me, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.
Goodbye.